Hey everybody, Jason Snell in for Leo this week. I got great news. Dan Moren is joining us along with Andy Ihnatko and Alex Lindsay. We have a lot to talk about despite the fact that we had nothing to talk about. Isn't it amazing? We're going to talk about lists. We're going to talk about philosophy. We're going to get into it. It's going to be deep. Plus, a thing that it cools your laptop that isn't a fan. What is that about? All coming up next.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode number 897, recorded on Tuesday, November 28th, 2023. The event.
This episode of MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by Miro, the online workspace for innovation, where your team can dream, design, and build the future together from any location. Tap into a way to map processes, visualize content, run retrospectives, and keep all your documents and data in one place. Get your first 3 boards for free at miro.com/podcast. And by Mylio. Mylio Photos is a smart and powerful system that lets you easily organize, edit, and manage years of important documents, photos, and videos in an offline library hosted on any device. Check out their limited time holiday gift bundle for a 25% discount on Mylio Photos Plus at mylio.com/twit25.
It's time for MacBreak Weekly, a week where nothing happened. No, that's a terrible way to start a podcast. It is a week where Thanksgiving happened, and we got to think a lot about Apple and related subjects. I'm Jason Snell, sitting in for Leo Laporte, who is contemplating the universe. It's a big job. Somebody's got to do it. Leo decided to take a crack at it, and it's a good week for it because it is a little quiet, but you know what? There's still stuff to talk about Apple, and I am joined by a wonderful panel of people. By the way, they just let me sit in this chair. I'm waiting for them to drag me out of it. But until then, let me introduce our two usual panelists, starting with Alex Lindsay. Alex, hi, how's it going?
I'm doing well. Good to be here.
It's good to have you. officehours.global. I could list, yes. I feel like I've been on the show long enough now that I could probably do a Leo impression, but I'm not going to do it yet.
Yet. That's the key.
Save that for a very special episode, or if we really run out of things to talk about, then we'll just go around the horn. Everybody work on an impression, your pick of the week and an impression this week. Andy Ihnatko is also here from WGBH in Boston. This week from SixColors.com too, where Andy's got a piece up about what we talked about last week, about that interesting, kind of strange Apple holiday video. Hi, Andy.
Hello. I'm glad you didn't tip things too early in the intro, because I think that I'm not speaking for everybody in the panel here, but I think we're all just sort of like processing the thing that happened. That we might not even talk about it this week because it's just so big.
So big.
We don't want to just go out with our first thought with something that's this just. Again, I can't get my head. I'm surprised I even showed up for today, because I've been in contemplation about that news item ever since I.
They made us.
I didn't believe
They made us come here and do a show, even though we're still all reeling from whatever.
Well, because Jason, we're here to provide reassurance. You know, even when we don't have the answers, our job is to tell the audience, to tell the public that answers will come. That this isn't as big a thing as we can make it out to be, when all we know at the early stages is fear. So we're going to hold hands across this digital landscape, and just like Hands Across America united our nation in the 1990s, and we're going to get through this together.
This is like the Saturday Night Live thing where it's like, get away from that. What the heck is that?
What are they even talking about? Yes, it's true, though. We're like the Swan Lake when Brezhnev was sick. For tech media. That's what Andy's trying to say here. Now, I think the show has been accused, quite rightly, of West Coast bias, because 3 of the 4 regulars here are on the West Coast. West Coast, best coast, by the way. Not just trolling you there. I decided to balance it out.
Jason.
I've gotten I decided to do the California, Massachusetts access. Okay, New England access. Andy's not quite in Massachusetts anymore, but New England access, by finding one of the key technology analysts on the East Coast. The SixColors East Coast Bureau Chief, Dan Moren, is here. Hi, Dan.
Hello, East Coast, right coast, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay,
also,
I mean, like on a map that with north on the top.
Yeah,
sure,
it's the right coast.
Sure,
it's the right coast. Also,
Okay.
I've barely slept in the last week, so if there really is giant news, I've missed something.
Oh man, get ready for later when Dan starts picking like invisible things that only he can see for his pick of the week. That'll be great. Like he's invented apps that don't exist, and it's great. So Dan,
They're amazing, Jason.
of course, writing his
Have to be
Six
seen to be
Colors,
believed.
and a novelist. We may talk about books later too. I wanted to start though. Top story is your AirDrop dangerous? Film at 11, right? Like
No. And the answer is no. Okay, let's move on.
Are the batteries in your remote TV remote control killing you?
If you eat enough of them, yes.
This is Betteridge's law of headlines.
Like it's hot reference anywhere, like because it's like this name drop is scalding.
Right. Apparently, okay. First off, the question is,
let's blow the lid off of this.
Do police departments function more or less like your relatives when it comes to forwarding Facebook posts? And the answer appears to be yes, because what's been going around, mostly posted on Facebook by various police departments, sometimes on their own websites, is this chain letter of a story warning people that with the new iOS update, now a surreptitious person can come up to you and rub their phone against you and steal all of your information. That's
what
right.
about that is surreptitious? Is somebody coming up and rubbing their phone on you?
Well, you're distracted.
Probably
you don't know what you want.
The height.
The kids will pick up contacts on the street, Dan. What are you talking about? That's what the stuff that you should only pick up at home.
Jason, it's easy to be glib in your little Pacific Coast enclave. Here in the Northeast, we are rubbing up against each other for heat
warmth,
all the time.
We are packed in like sardines. It is just the density is just incredible.
So basically, yes.
Right.
It's a police are warning about this new feature called NameDrop, which basically is AirDrop for contact information. It happens automatically when you touch your phone with another modern iPhone. There's a little NFC handoff. In fact,
you still have to accept it, right? There's another.
You do. Well, let's. In fact, Alex, let's see if we can do it here. I'm going to bring up a phone.
We've all been having trouble actually getting it to work between our own phones.
If only it were more reliable than it actually
Jason,
is. All right.
I've got my Android phone ready 3,000 miles away.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Based on these police reports, I think that we're going to get a result here that's going to surprise a lot of people. So I'm ready. It's on unlock.
All right. So let's see here.
I'm holding it up.
I'm going to try to do this. It should be on AirPlay too, I think, guys. I don't know. Okay, here we go. And look, nothing has happened.
Yeah. See, we can't even get it to work when we want it to work.
If someone is trying to do this to you and is just like constantly like nudging up against you for a solid
there it is. There it is. There it goes. Bloop, bloop.
Ooh.
Oh. And
you put in your passcode.
Oh, and nothing happened. What is going on? Anyway, this is how it's supposed to work. It's literally an NFC tag, and then my password's 1234 because this is a totally fake phone. And then what happens is there's a little bloop and you get a contact sheet. And this is the thing that the police are warning us against right now, which is, again, stay calm, stay in your homes, remain indoors. Everything's going to be fine. What actually happens is you are prompted to offer your contact sheet to the other person, and you get to choose. There's nothing that happens surreptitiously. In fact, this feature is a security feature because what Apple did, and I know we talked about it here over this last year, is it turned off the ability for you to always be open for AirDrop from anyone, and instead made it that you can go to settings and be open to AirDrop for 10 minutes from anyone, but otherwise it's only for people in your contacts. And that means you're not getting unsolicited, gross pictures in your AirDrop. But if you're next to somebody who isn't in your contacts and you do want to AirDrop with them, you touch your phones together and it says, oh, there's consent here. Now we're going to let them decide to send pictures to each other or send contacts or whatever you want to do to this person. You basically make a temporary connection, which is very clever.
Well, and the better part of it even is that even within the name drop feature, it's granular in a way that sharing contacts didn't used to be, because when you do it, you can choose exactly what information you want to share. So if you only want to share your email or your, phone number or something like that, you can choose just that thing. So it's not only is this a non-story, but it's like ignoring the fact that like they actually tried to make it more private because you can be in control. If you shared your contact information before this, it shared the whole thing, kit and caboodle, no matter what you had in there. So that was in some ways worse because they would have all of your phone numbers and your home address and whatever else you keep in your contact card.
Yeah, it was a positive thing because, like, again, it's pretty light in terms of news, except for the thing, of course. And the
event. We call it, Andy, the event.
Exactly. This way, we get to write about it once, first time when it's breaking news, and then we get to write a second piece and submit a second invoice about how we can debunk all of this. And we're looking forward to a third think piece about how law enforcement, public media, social media often converge in each other to make people more afraid about tech than they actually need to be. So I'm looking forward to it being a very, very Merry Christmas by filing 3 invoices for this.
Should we even be sharing contact information? Can you ever really know anyone or be known by anyone?
Oh, wow. That's the sort of thing Leo is contemplating right now.
Dan is,
exactly.
well, Dan, like the thing, once you give a name to something, you take some of its power away from it. You see, you can't do the incantation unless you have that familiar contact.
Yes, and that's why the event will be always remain as the event that will not be named.
Yes.
Like that's the that we won't keep.
I'll only share it with you if you touch to my phone.
With all these people playing Dungeons and Dragons, they are into necromancy. The kids today, so they need to be protected.
I think the only way that someone could take advantage of this is if you left your phone at the bar unlocked. Yep. But they could do so many other worse things.
Exactly.
You do that, and I will say that while it's a little annoying, the great thing about the facial recognition or the fingerprint recognition is that my phone locks immediately. Like as soon as I walk, I think it's on the 15-second whatever, I'm going to have it lock up quickly, and just in case I set it down somewhere. And that I'm always surprised sometimes when I pick up somebody's phone. This is the kind of extend this to some safety. I'm always surprised when I pick up somebody's phone and it doesn't have a passcode. Like it's like, hey, I'm here. That is a bad idea. Like that's what law enforcement should be spreading is, hey, let's not do that. And let's not use password or 1, 2, 3, 4 unless we're doing it on a show. Mm-hmm. Those are all things that we probably should avoid. And
I think, but I think that like the law enforcement community, the federal law enforcement community at least, is very much into. They should be spreading the rumor that, passcodes compromise your security because if someone guesses your passcode, then they know your first child's birthday if you're using that. The best thing is to leave the phone completely unlocked, no biometrics, no passkeys, no whatsoever. I mean, if you hand it over to a cop at a speed trap, what's he going to do? Take it back to the car and dump all your messages? I don't think so. That's not the police agencies that we grew up with. So yeah, there's a lot.
You should also have a desktop widget that just shows all your other passwords, just in plain text. That's the best way to do it.
I like it. I mean, it's a replacement for Post-it notes. Clearly,
if you can also be so kind as to have some sort of odor in the car that could be misinterpreted as some sort of controlled substance, thus meriting a stop and search. Again, do you support the police or do you not support the poliess?
So
yes or no? Everybody, let's go left to right.
I think the lesson here.
I support the police.
Well, now after the event, Andy, how could you not?
They're the real heroes.
I think what we need to do here, though, is look. The people on this panel, the people in this audience, we are the people that our people come to for actual answers for tech questions. We're the ones who will say, hey, I saw on Facebook, my local police department on Facebook told me that my iPhone is sending my contact information and probably my calendar and other things to very bad people who are just walking by with their phones. What do I do? And so it's incumbent on all of us to be the ones to say, dear listeners, spread the word, counteract the misinformation that they find on Facebook, that this feature is secure and fine, and actually might be fun if you could get it to work at least, which I couldn't do here, but theoretically.
It reminds all of us, everyone in this conversation, and I would guess most of the people who are in this podcast, this is like the tense season because when we go to Thanksgiving, when we go to like the holiday parties with our family, Christmas back at home with all the deep relatives, we're not afraid of political discussions. We're afraid of like the line of Genius Bar requests that will come pouring in, not on actual practical things, and also about, hey, should I worry about OpenAI hacking into becoming a robot that kills kills us all. And having to the last time I did like the full sweep, like I actually made sure that in the car I had a bag full of like I had a laptop, I had every cable that I thought I would need, because I knew that at some point someone would ask me about, hey, how come my Wi-Fi isn't working anymore? And you'd have to, and you want to be of value. You want to be able to, you want to get the big piece of turkey, the big piece of cake in the to-go bag at the end of the day. So yes, I think haven't we all been in that position?
Well, we don't have to worry about our Wi-Fi anymore after the event. It's not a problem.
Well, that's the good thing about it, frankly.
Andy, I relish being asked Genius Bar questions. In fact, I would like to bring one of those Lucy style, like the Genius is in boxes to my family gatherings, and I'll tell you why. It's because most of the time you're with your family, it's a little awkward. Just did this for Thanksgiving. It's a little awkward. What are we going to talk about? Are we telling the same stories about what we're doing, what our kids are doing, all of that? And then somebody asks a technology question, and suddenly podcast Jason turns on, and I'm like, oh well, let me tell you about that. And it's like, God, I do that every day. I could do that all day. So
I don't know. I go the other way. I go the unprompted way, which is 4 days into my time at my in-laws, I'm like, why is this Wi-Fi so slow? Yes. Let me just fix it.
I'm in the same boat where I walk around and I'm like, let me fix this. I need to fix this.
It's bothering me.
Where's the remote of your TV? I have issues with how you've got this TV set up, and I need to.
My father-in-law left the room briefly while we were starting a movie, and I went like, motion smoothing off. We were watching a movie. Yeah, we were just starting a movie. I was like, I cannot do 2.5 hours of Indiana Jones in motion smoothing.
I have heard somebody refer to the ultimate achievement of being a nerd family member is going to the same house the next year for the same holiday and discovering that motion smoothing is still off. That's when you know you've won. Go ahead, Alex.
I delegated even. So my kids went to my parents' house in Pennsylvania for the summer, or for about a month in the summer, and I sent a Starlink out. Like, we need to fix the internet while you're there. just like they got 1 megasecond out there than the country, and I was like, and they were like, it's amazing. There's 40 megs a second. I was like, yeah, but you got to carry around your bandwidth, to make sure that you have it when you need it.
Just got to be Alex's relative, I guess. That's the answer there. Wow.
Well, then the worst part, though, is that as soon as they left, my mom was like, you should turn it off. We're not using it anymore. And I was just like, okay, never mind. We'll go back over.
Oh, no. Well, anyway, look, I'm not saying that one of your relatives is going to come up and ask you about how Apple is stealing your contact information and sending it to the dark web by AirDrop. I'm just saying I'm saying they will. So now you're better armed, right? You know that it's just a new iOS 17 feature, and it's hard to get it to work anyway. So don't worry about it. It's fine. Yeah. And you're using iOS 15 anyway, right, Mom? Yes. Yeah. All right, fine. Yeah. I need to buy my mom a new phone.
Whether you're talking to relatives or talking to the public via the radio, this is a good chance to pivot this into. But you know what the real threat is? Multi-trillion-dollar tech corporations that are in control of public infrastructure that has been privatized, that are now insulating themselves against any hope of regulation or accountability. That's more of a threat then. And
really,
you've got to turn off those settings in your congressperson.
It's a very zingy Thanksgiving dinner conversation.
It's nice when now that you're on Zoom, with the hosts, they can see you, while you're talking, you can see them wait, we're supposed to be talking about the police in this thing. Why is he talking about late stage capitalism?
Well, that's look.
I didn't realize that was an Apple an iPhone 15 feature.
Being on a podcast with Andy Ihnatko is a ride, and you just gotta go with it, because that's just how it's going to be. But
You're welcome.
I do. Job done. I do want to move on to one of my most favorite times of the year. You're thinking it's the holiday season. No, it is the season of list making. Oh, you got to love those lists. And also, you got to love the end of year lists that come out before it's even December, because December, what happens in December stays in December, I guess. Doesn't matter if you have a big hit something or other in December. Nobody cares. The lists are already out. Too bad. Anyway, as we record this on Tuesday, the 28th of November, Apple has deemed the year over and has released a bunch of their lists of the year, which I suppose we're not going to this is not a Casey Kasem thing. We're not going to count them down, but we should at least mention them. Apple came out with their list of the top podcasts of 2023 in Apple Podcasts. This is, of course, only measuring use in Apple Podcasts, so it doesn't count Spotify or third-party apps. It's not looking at podcast listens on Apple devices. It's just the Apple Podcast app. A lot of familiar names on there. I will point out the top show, Crime Junkie, for the second straight year, and the top news show, Scamanda. These are both crime shows, crime podcasts. If you thought crime podcasts were over, they're not. They're not. And then a bunch of other stuff, politics.
There's
and
still
news
crime,
and the usual.
Jason.
And crime.
There's still crime.
Crime.
Like name dropping everywhere.
Yeah.
I tell you.
I mean,
it could be happening.
It could be, but that is so Apple, as a way to promote, obviously, Apple Podcasts in general, which is an incredibly popular app. I mean, Apple Podcasts and Spotify probably cover, I don't know, 90-something% of all podcasts being listened to. So it's good to see that, I don't know, they're still in business. Crime podcasts are still a big business. We're going to pivot to crime here at Twit next year, so get ready for that.
We can
Carrying
only
it out
the crime
or
industry
talking about
keeps
it?
producing
Just to-
content enough. Yeah.
Are we doing crime? Are we?
Well,
that
I
an
mean,
option?
it's a choice.
We just do
It's still.
crime?
My understanding is that's what Leo is meditating about right now. Is like, do we commit crimes or do we just do podcasts about crimes?
I like Pivot to Crime as a the sequel to Pivot to Video. When everyone was like, do video, no, just do crime.
I mean,
just do
we-
a bit of crime.
There are a lot of shows on TV also about crime. Law and Order has done okay. So I think that you can see the draw.
Crime
There's
and
one thing I
punishment.
learned from
Yes.
if there's one thing I learned from Sam Bankman-Fried this year, crime pays. I only watched the first half of that story. Sorry, I don't know how it ends.
Yeah, spoilers for the SPF part 2. But get ready for a ride, Dan, when you find out what happened to that guy. He'll be fine. It's going to be fine.
It's a bad year to be a tech CEO named Sam.
Yeah, just wait. There'll be a podcast about him and his crimes too. So get ready. I mean, I'm sure there are already 90 of them, and they're all at the top of the charts at Apple's top podcast chart.
I do find interesting that how long This American Life has sat in the top 10. Like it's like every year for the last, I don't know, 15 years, it sits in the top 10.
A pro tip.
I mean,
a pro tip about list making is if you have a prominent best new podcasts, partly that's because your most podcasts are always the same. And so you have to have a new shows because it's the one way that you can have a list that's more interesting than the one that's always like, This American Life, Dateline NBC, Smart Lists. It's a bunch of the usual suspects on that list.
But beyond all the other ones, I mean, and as someone who does podcasts, if you want to, I mean, they have a budget that, our budgets pale in comparison. They have people working on things for months. So, and there's a lot there. But I will say that it just feels like when I listen to This American Life, I look at the title and I go, this is going to be the first one I don't like. This is going to be boring. It goes through my head every single time I look at it. And then I listen to the whole thing. And the quality of the production is just, as a person, all of us make podcasts, but as I listen to it, the use of, recorded sound and how they put together the story, it's like a masterclass. If you kind of listen to the structure, it's still, I mean, the other ones I go, maybe they're worth listening to, but like I open them up and I listen to them for about 15 minutes. I'm like, I don't know why anybody listens to this. But This American Life is definitely not one of them.
Yeah, it's just it's a matter of effort, which means in the podcast business, it's a matter of scale, right? You need to have enough listeners to be able to afford to take that much time with every individual episode and have a staff and collect all that stuff. And it helps
that
works of art.
They had a radio show.
Yeah, right. Well, that's part of the business model, right? Is that it's radio and a podcast, and you put those together. And having done some sort of NPR style podcast episodes in the past, it is a wonderful medium. It is a wonderful format, and it is so much work. And I think that the truth is that most podcasts can't afford that level of the amount of money spent per minute on something like that. But it is a great sound.
It is a lot like the pivot towards like when news crews, local news, we were able to like take the van out to do live hookups for the most mundane of things, like where there would be live hook. So all of a sudden there'd be a live satellite hookup at 11 p.m. in front of the courthouse where like a legal case was decided 8 hours earlier. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about like the well-funded podcast is that this could be like 8 sentences of script that's written, that's recorded anywhere. But they want the room tone of like the trucks passing by and like the wind coming by and saying, and the intro that goes, gosh, it's like it's almost all weeds. Anyway, well, at this location is where In 1983, a coalition was formed, an evil coalition whose ramifications are only being heard right now. I'm not complaining. It makes it more interesting to listen to.
It's great drama.
It's all about a theater of the air experience.
To your point, though, it's like we had someone on our on office hours that was working on Wonderly podcasts, and they're doing them, some of them in surround, like they're actually doing them in a surround format. And when I edit a podcast, I'm like, well, let's take some of the gaps out and let's do a little let's do a little stuff, and we'll tighten it up. Did he really need to say that? I think I can cut that out. There's a couple like little bits and pieces. Oh, he was knocking on the mic, or there was I need to get rid of some of those pops or whatever. That's how I edit my podcasts, And so there's not, it's like 3 tracks, of what I need to do if it's 2 people talking to each other. They opened up their version of that for one podcast, and it was like 80 tracks of stuff. And I just looked at all these tracks, all these little squares in Pro Tools of all the, just like, whoa. It is when you have the budget, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, a Chihuahua and a Great Dane are the same animal, but right. It's like podcasts are podcasts, but there are podcasts.
Not all podcasts are podcasts.
Not all. Yeah. All podcasts are podcasts, but some of them are created.
I just worry about the mic. We mail the mics to people. We're like, I need you to use. It's the same one that Dan's using. We send the MB7s out, and we're just like, we need you to use this mic. And they're like, but I have a mic.
That mic is garbage. Put this mic in.
I get that CNN said that was fine for a hit. It's not.
It's not.
It's not. They shouldn't have told you that, and they embarrassed you on national television. Now let's use a real mic.
I think the brand name of that. MSO. It stands for microphone shaped object. Get rid of it. Use ours.
Yeah.
Could be a great prop. Before we move on and talk about more lists, which we'll probably do after a break, where Leah will appear from the astral plane, I believe, to tell us about our first sponsor. But before we do that, while we're talking about podcasts, I want to mention another story that we're following for you here live on MacBreak Weekly. Wow, that sounded way more newsy than it should. So Castro, which is a popular indie iOS podcast app, is having some serious database issues that have caused lots of problems for Castro users. And I know a lot of people who love Castro. It's a really nice, beautifully designed app. It's been around for a few years. There is a little more troubling news, though. One of the somebody who used to work on Castro, Mohit Memoria, posted on Twitter yesterday that he had talked to the Castro leadership and says that Castro is being shut down over the next 2 months. I've heard from other sources who've heard that it was basically mothballed and was going to be shut down at some point. I haven't been able to get anything direct from the people at Castro to confirm or deny this, but if this is true, it's really sad, because this was one of the favorite indie iOS podcast apps, because it had a beautiful design and a very clear take with a kind of inbox metaphor for your new episodes that people really liked. And Apple Podcasts is the 100-pound gorilla, 1,000-pound gorilla. It's a big gorilla is what I'm saying. And Spotify is obviously huge and cross-platform, but these little indie apps, I use an indie app to listen to my podcast, and I like it better than even the new features in Apple Podcasts. It can't match it. I use Overcast, and I know a lot of people love Pocket Casts, but so it's sad news. And also, I think the message is it's hard out here for indie podcast apps that were created at a time when nobody really cared about podcast listening. Not really. Apple's early versions of its podcast app weren't very good. Spotify didn't care. And so a lot of indie apps kind of made their name, but it feels more and more like Apple Podcasts and Spotify are the monsters in this field, and it makes it really hard for a small development team to make it work. So I hope it's not true.
Easy is hard. It makes it hard for everybody else. It's just like you can have a bunch of extra features, but are they enough to get you
past
over
the default, right? Yeah.
Yeah. When you have a default app, it's hard to pass up.
Yeah. And Apple Podcasts used to be not great, right? I think it had the reel-to-reel tape.
Well, and it also has a lot of
old days.
When you have the podcast app itself is getting better, and it's also delivering a lot of data back to people who are using Apple to distribute their podcasts.
Yep.
So you're getting a lot more. Everyone wants more data, and it's not giving so much people data, but it's giving what are they listening to and where are they listening and how are they. That data is all coming back in a way that And I was talking to someone about this over the break, that I think that a lot of the data has actually been really damaging to podcasts in general, because there was this kind of happy, like, we don't know how many people are actually listening to the podcast. We just know that, 80,000 people downloaded it or 20,000 people downloaded it. And having that data and having a rough idea of what that data looked like, that allowed people to, I think that we, and because we were working on verticals, we had relatively good, CPMs. And I think that this drive for data of trying to be precise allowed the pencil pushers in the thing, because the thing is, the reality is the result of being on a podcast and getting a live read oftentimes is the ROI is there. Like sure. If you look at what we call, a lot of times we talk about multipliers, like how much money did you put in and how much money did you get out? And oftentimes that multiplier on podcast is really good. But then you have people who just can't get over the fact that now that they have the data, they're paying $50 CPM. Like, they care about the CPM, like that matters. And they're not looking at just the ROI of the ad itself. And I think that that's pushed a lot of pricing down, and then also put a lot of pressure on a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, it was always the story that they used to use how effective the ads were in driving sales. Yeah. And then the numbers sort of eclipse that. And the problem is that the numbers, maybe on a show that's more effective, the numbers don't look as good, even though the effectiveness was there. But now they're measuring based on a standard. It doesn't always make sense. But it's tough. And you're so right, Alex, about the power of the default. We've talked about it here a lot. Defaults, they just have to be good enough. And that original Apple Podcast app wasn't good enough. But it I think, continues to win over people who, it's just so easy. It syncs with everything that Apple does, including like Apple TV and HomePods and things like that. And the features keep getting better. And they've integrated things like premium subscriptions in there, which are, again, limited to Apple. I don't do any of them because it shuts off all the other people, or you have to build it twice. But it is super convenient if you're a mainstream podcast, one of these podcasts that's on this list, to be able to say a couple of taps in your podcast app, and now you are paying for the premium version, and you can do that with Apple Podcasts.
What I find amazing is if you've ever, I don't know if you built all the artwork for the Apple podcasts.
Yes. So many templates, so many PSDs. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So many. I was like, I would have never built the logo this way if I'd known I was going to have to build all these templates. Like, it was a process.
It's interesting. I mean, you said the default, and I agree. I'm an Apple Podcast user and have been for a long time. I've used other apps. I've used Overcast. I've used Castro at various points. I tend to be a fairly light podcast listener, and for that, podcast is pretty good because it's just there and like gets out of your way. You just do the thing, and everything's there and it works fine. And the fact that it's integrated with the ecosystem, and it's like I can listen to stuff on my HomePod, I can listen to stuff in the kitchen or in the car, or whatever. There's a lot going for it there, and it is hard to overcome that. And if you're somebody who is not a podcast, power user or whatever, like, it is definitely fine for most people.
Yeah, there's a reason why the user interface is so simple. It doesn't have a patch on all the features of Pocket Casts, features that I really, really use and need for discovery, because I try not to get stuck in the same 10 popular podcasts that everyone else listens to. As much as great as they are, it's like I try not to get stuck in that sort of thing. But the thing is, we often forget that people are not looking for most consumers aren't looking for an adventure. They're not looking for, oh my goodness, this podcast app that came pre-installed on the phone is good, but I wonder what kind of wonderland of extremely more full-featured and different experiences are out there. It's like, no, this is the podcast feature of the iPhone. It works fine, and they could last 10 years without even scratching the surface of what they think is the limitations of what they want for a podcast app. So the idea of default, it even kind of extends to what we were talking about earlier about the popularity of This American Life. There's, to an extent, there are like 10, maybe a dozen podcasts that are sort of the default podcasts, where when a podcast app tries to get you started with things, by one measure or another, it's going to start you off with the most popular and broadest appeal shows that already have an immense audience, an immense amount of listeners. And there are only so many hours in the day when you can listen to podcasts, even the ones that you actually enjoy. It's my inbox on Pocket Cast is just crammed full of shows that I can't wait to actually listen to. But I don't walk that much. I don't do that much house cleaning. And so that's the problem of the idea that, okay, everyone's going to be doing This American Life. Everyone's going to be listening to Fresh Air. Everyone's going to be listening to the Office Ladies podcast and 2 others. And where is the opportunity for that 5,000 listener show that is amazingly perfect for that listener? And what is the podcast app doing to help that person find that content?
Yeah, and I think that the real the challenge also is that audio is keeps on getting bigger, and the fact that, and so that I don't think when I started listening to podcasts, I've been listening to audiobooks since they were on tape, so that, I've been listening for a long time, since the late 80s, but it definitely got a lot easier when I didn't have to go somewhere. Audible, I guess I pay Audible some money that goes out of my account, and I get more credits keep showing up. So I just keep on buying books. So I've got 100 books that I haven't gotten to that I'm just like, oh yeah, that'll be good. And then I have or News Over Audio, NOAA, which is just like all these magazines that are available that I can listen to. And then you have Apple. You can see Apple like slowly adding audio to all the magazines that are in the Apple News. And so I think that there's also to go back to what Andy's talking about, we're just competing for time. Like at some point, I just don't have, there's only, it turns out there really is only so many hours in the day. And especially now that a lot of people are working from home, I think it gets more challenging because like that used to be a dead time.
Travel time.
And now, like I'm sometimes lucky to get to the pool or get to the garage, like I don't get out of the house sometimes. And so that's I think that there's just not the same time frame that there used to be.
We love people with extreme commutes. Keep on driving. Keep on riding that train. Do it.
Back to work.
We love it. We're podcasters.
When's the last time you visited your mom an hour and 45 minutes away?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure she'd love to see you. Yeah.
All right. Well, these are deep philosophical thoughts, and that's good because Leo is also thinking deep philosophical thoughts. But before he left to do that, he also stopped by and has a message for you. So we'll take a break right now.
Jason, nice to see you. No, I'm not here. You're just imagining this. I popped in to tell you about Miro. Our show today brought to you by Miro. Because we use Miro, and I'm kind of up on what Miro does. Hard to describe for me. It's an online workspace for innovation. But I don't know. Does that say what it does, and how it can help you? It depends on what you're doing. We use it to plan shows, but it can be so many different things. It's one incredible visual place that brings all your innovative work together. And it's great for teams because it doesn't matter if you're in the office, if you're at home, if you're in Timbuktu, it's all in the same place, even if you're in different time zones. Miro's packed with the right things to be your dream product's home base. If you're doing product development, we're talking 6 whole capability bundles from product development workflows to content visualization, all powered by Miro AI, which means you're generating new ideas or summarizing complex information pretty much instantaneously. Miro can work for any team, but product development teams really get the full experience. Miro offers teams the richest feature set of any visual workspace with specific tools to help with strategy or process mapping, facilitation tools to run effective design or agile sprints. You get the picture. Miro connects super seamlessly to platforms you're already using. We use it with Zapier and Google Docs. You can use it with Jira and Confluence, Asana. You can centralize all sorts of integrations. So you can centralize work in a way that makes sense for your team. It's all there. They don't need to go anywhere else. They don't need to open any other windows, which means the context never shifts. You've always got everything you need in one place. There is one source of truth. You're all on the same page. You can update projects or statuses using any of the tools inside Miro. You don't have to leave to go to Confluence. It's in there. It also ends up being a massive time saver. Miro users say they save up to 80 hours a year. That's like 2 weeks of vacation a year by streamlining conversations, cutting down on meetings, and I know we all want to do that, and seeing all that most up-to-date information in one place. That's great for feedback, too. Of course, they've got commenting, but Miro just released a board video recording feature. They call it Talk Track to save even more time. Instead of having yet another meeting, pre-record your thoughts, leave it on the board. Everybody gets input, right? And you don't have to schedule the millionth meeting of the week. Look, I can go on and on. The best way to find out about Miro is to try it for yourself. And here's the good news. Your first 3 boards are free. Yeah, start working better. Miro.com/podcast. MIRO.com/podcast. It's a really cool product. We're very excited to be working with Miro. We use them ourselves, and they're going to be with us all through 2024. So we're very happy about that as well. Miro, you got to try it. Miro.com/podcast. Now, let's get back to MacBreak Weekly. Jason?
Thank you, Leo. People on video just saw me beam in where Leo just was. It's a creepy, weird. Speaking of lists, we were talking about lists. Best of the year lists, right? Before we got all philosophical about podcasts, we were talking about lists. There are more Apple lists to talk about. Apple also unveiled the top books of 2023, as well as a new year in review experience. So if you're, again, like with Apple Podcasts, we're talking about the power of the default here, right? Apple Books, you might use Kindle, you might use Kobo, you might use a separate e-reader. I don't know, but you might just read on your phone and your iPad using Apple Books. And Apple has come out with a list of what people are reading in its book app. So again, no real shocker here. Prince Harry, top nonfiction book of the year. They've got some audiobooks in there too, because that's Apple's way of reminding you that yes, there are audiobooks in Apple Books as well. And I think what's interesting also is that they have that in this new year in review that appears inside the book app that will do things like tell you what the books are that you read this year. Even if you didn't log it yourself, it knows because it's the app you use to read those books. And a series of reader types. What kind of reader are you? You don't even have to take a quiz. You just read the books and it comes up with it saying, oh, you're the seeker, you're the contemporary, you're the wanderer, all of these things. So right in the app, in the year in review.
Don't judge me, device I spent $1,200 for. That's very unkind. That's very not nice. That's not grateful.
It's a cold reading. It's not. It's a warm reading. It knows everything about you.
You have a very short attention span, and you like sensationalistic things. You like being lectured to and made afraid of things that you actually shouldn't be afraid about by people that are trying to manipulate you into doing things that you can't even understand. You are a pawn in a much larger game that you don't even understand.
I imagine they're using it to make some recommendations and sell more books. Dan Moren, you are an author. You are a novelist. You are inside the book publishing machine, or I don't know, next to the book publishing machine, watching it grind away.
You're part of the problem, Dan Moren.
Or are you part of the solution?
There is a problem. I guess I'm part of it in some way. I'm reliably informed that I just missed out on hitting top fiction books of 2023. It only goes number 5 there. Number 6. I was just so close.
It's All Souls Lost by Dan Moren.
I'm fascinated by this. I went to look and try to find my reader type because I was curious, and it told me you haven't finished any books in Apple Books. So pound sand, buddy.
Yeah.
That was not the response that I was looking for. The thing I found the most interesting about this was somebody else mentioning online that there is a way that you can mark books that you've read elsewhere. If you've read like hard copies or something, they want you to log. There is a way to log that in Apple Books. And I thought, that's interesting.
Like so much work.
Exactly. It is. That's just the point. And I started thinking to myself, could I like rig a shortcut or something? Or I can when I finish a book, I hit a button and it tells Apple Books I've read this? I don't know.
I can't even be reliably expected to do a to-do list. Let alone having to log the book that I just listened to.
I can't be expected to take the book out of my bed after I finish reading it. Now I've got to file paperwork to get the receipt.
Do you lie on a book of beds, Andy? That must be nice.
There's some people like to track themselves. It's just not me. I still every time any story comes up with Apple Books, I just feel like, what a lost opportunity.
It is. I think that's the point, is that it is, seeing this from the inside and seeing the stranglehold Amazon has on this industry, it is a real shame that Apple, a company as large as it is, a company as invested in media as it is, has not been able to really provide a worthy challenger.
Well, but the challenger is not competing with Amazon. I mean, people have heard me say this 1,000 times, but not competing with Amazon on just words. The idea is that you could build a thing that we call a book that is much more interactive. And they started to kind of go down that path But the idea is to build something that is much more interesting than just the text and listening to it. And text is a highly efficient compression and format, but it takes a lot to encode and decode it well. And the issue is that there's we have pages that we can put videos into, and we can do a lot of other things. And Apple kind of gets that kind of working and all these other things, but being able to publish it out to a book, when it wasn't through books, but when Elements came out. And I was like, this is the future of books, like for science books and so on and so forth. Like DK could be owning this market. And then, but that was written as an app because they couldn't do it in books. They couldn't do it in books. And
I would disagree with that. But like, such a huge chunk of the market is still just text, right? And like, that's exactly. You're not going to need that for every experience in text. And I think that's one place where competitors like Amazon, even honestly Kobo, I use a Kobo reader. I know Jason has a Kobo reader, where they're doing the job better because the experience of, even if I just want to read text, the experience is better. I don't 100%. Want to read stuff on my phone. I don't want to read stuff on my iPad even, because it's really big and it's heavy. And if I hit myself in the head with it while I'm lying in bed, it'll hurt. So for me, I think this is the biggest challenge is Apple wants to shoehorn the Apple books into its existing ecosystem. And the problem is ultimately, yes, you might think, I've got my phone everywhere I go, or I use my iPad all the time and it's a perfect place to read book. But then you're dealing with all the competition of the other stuff that's on your smart device. Do I want to read this book that I'm reading that's kind of, maybe it's a little boring, or do I want to go to Twitter where I can get a dopamine hit every 30 seconds? That's a big challenge for Apple on their devices, is this idea of multitasking. And it's so easy to not read, frankly.
The biggest problem is just DRM, because there are very few areas in which I actively dissuade people from a certain choice. And one of them is, why on earth would you buy a book from the Apple bookstore when you are absolutely 100% locked into devices with an Apple logo on it? Where trust me, I think that Amazon and the Kindle system they're a huge bunch of bastards. I refer you back to the conversation we had last week about what they're doing to Comixology. But at the very least, if I spend $23 on a book in the Kindle store, I can read it on my iPhone. I can read it on my iPad. I can read it on my Android phone. I can buy a $75 e-ink reader to read it on. I can buy a $300 e-ink reader to read it on. I have all of these. It's as close to a non-DRM'd experience as you're probably going to get. Whereas with Apple, it's like it's not possible for them to do like an $80 iBooks reader for all kinds of sensible reasons. But this is the reason why, God, if I'm going to have to spend real money on a book and I'm going to be locked into one platform, it had better be the most ecumenical platform with the most choices available to me anywhere. And I just don't see how the iBook store is in any way a viable choice.
Well, I don't have any of those issues. I don't care what other platforms it might be on, and I still only use the Kindle reader because I had early problems with the books where I bought some books on Apple and then I couldn't figure out how to get them from one Apple device to another Apple device, and that happened, I don't know, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and I was like, okay, I'm done. Like I don't want to play this. I don't play this. Now, the number one thing that I use iBooks for is actually, or use books for, is that I download every manual that I possibly.
Yes, me too.
So like I have, on all my devices, I have every manual for every piece of hardware or every piece of software that I have, so that I can get to it. So as a PDF holder, it's turned out to be cool. But as a platform, again, they just have to. I'm not saying that Apple could outdo Amazon in that area, but I do think that Apple has the advantage of the opportunity to do highly interactive publishing, and that's a niche that they could own, as opposed to competing with Amazon on, fighting Amazon on the same playing field. That ship is gone. Past, like it's gone. Like there's no, like you're not gonna get people to move away from once you have 100 or 200 books in the Kindle, in Audible, you're not gonna go anywhere. Or Kindle or whatever. So Apple's kind of given that up, but with USDZ, with video, with those things, and making those tools more effective, tying the tools into it. There are so many, and again, we have to remember that when you used to walk into a bookstore, a lot of books are obviously sold as fiction, but that's 10% of a bookstore. Everything else is nonfiction. Everything else is what people are passionate about. There's one small section of a bookstore that's fiction, and everything else is how to cook and how to build something and how to, and philosophy and all kinds of other things. But the main thing is in those areas, I mean, I'd love to have cookbooks that had videos in them because I can't understand what they want me to do here. I don't understand. And being able to insert those things, I think is a real opportunity. And it would take a company the size of Apple to build, and it has all the tools, whether it's Motion and Keynote and Pages and Final Cut. It has all the tools that could feed all that content into that pipeline in a way that nobody else in the world could do. And I'm not saying that that's going to replace what people are doing with regular books. I'm just saying that's a new format. Like that's something that could grow into something that's probably bigger than they can keep doing the little print business that they're doing. But I don't think that that's a very big.
It's interesting though. I mean, because then you've got a whole different market you're competing with at that point. Because I think cookbooks with videos in them, sure, like there's an interesting idea there. But how many people go to YouTube to look up stuff, right? Like then
but the problem is that
a whole different set of things.
But here's the issue is that you watch Babish, Cooking with Babish or whatever you want to do on YouTube.
Babish, yeah.
Now you have to figure out how to hit pause and stop and go and everything else. And so the thing is having something, and the issue is there's so many, those types of things would be much better. Taking a YouTube video, cutting it up where it had, this is how you do that step, and here's the actual text version of it, is way more effective in a way to actually watch something and do it. You could, you watch the video and then you can immediately, do those pieces. Like for instance, if you look at Heston, Heston makes that little pan that has a Bluetooth to your phone. Part of that, I have the pot and the pan and the thing. And part of what makes it really good when I want to experiment with a new meal is the pan. The pan is really nice, but what really is the secret is the video. So that what they do is they have every step says, this is what you got to do. And it shows a video of that step. And then you go to the next one. It shows a video of that step. And if you already know it, you don't have to hit play. Like, I know how to dice onions. Okay, I don't need to do that. But if I don't, I hit the button and I get to sit there and figure out how to do that properly.
Yeah.
I think your other challenge in that department is publishers who are going to have to want to invest in this too. This is a place where Apple would need to, I think, offer some degree of subsidization or hand-holding because a lot of publishers
No, you have YouTubers that know how to do this.
Well, the thing is that which is true, but that's a huge chunk of the market. I mean, the publishers are still dominating this industry. So,
but the thing
upsetting them is upsetting the apple cart there is it's difficult. It's hard. They're very
it is hard.
Yes, you can push that hard, but it's a small niche, like you said, and I think Apple doesn't necessarily see enough profit there.
I think that the thing is that it's a small niche right now, but the thing is that partially because the tools are difficult Apple's the only company that owns all the tools. Tying the tools together to make it easier to publish these would, and being able to have an easy storefront to put this on. I think that there's a lot of people that might be, that might be interested in that. It's just that it's
the problem is that it's kind of like remember when vinyl records were being clobbered by CDs, and so suddenly you see record players that play records, but they kind of try to be as CD-like as possible. Where you like that track next button, we will let you seek out the next track on the LP, and hey, we'll have some sort of a noise reduction on this too, and hey, we'll have we'll have like front loading, so you don't have to hold it by your fingertips. It's the idea of here is a really old technology, but hey, let's try to make it viable by making it look like the thing that people are saying that they actually want, when the right answer was this is kind of done in the form that. But what I'm getting at is that I think that this is not how cookbooks work now. It's like the idea of let's have a cookbook with videos inserted into it. That's a very let's make a vertical record player. People go to Binging with Babish to watch for 6 minutes him make the macaroni and cheese. Then they go to the kitchen that has his cookbook in it that gives the actual step-by-step recipes. They don't necessarily have to go back to sections of the video to go see it, but they've seen it once and now they're seeing it again. Meanwhile, YouTube is making more advanced. They do some incredible stuff to make this informative content more interesting, where it will automatically find the high points of in a 20-minute video, like, okay, we're going to skip over the part where she talks about the summer she spent in Provence during her skip year, the relationship that she had, the relationship that she was moved. Let's get right to the mac and cheese. And then when you need to figure out, oh, wait a minute, do I need eggs in this, and how do I temper an egg? It will cut to, oh, well, here's the part where she talks about tempering eggs. This is the next generation of stuff. I think your idea of a digital cookbook it'd be very, very interesting, but other than one important creator who decides that they're going to make this part of their brand, I just don't see it.
Also, let's talk about the fact that what Alex is describing sounds great, but Apple already kind of tried this. They tried this, and
they gave it to Pearson, and that was the dumbest idea ever.
Here's the bottom line, Alex. They tried this with iBooks Author, and then they tried it with Pages, and I think the failure of this is not. They thought it would be easy, and you're right. They also didn't. They made it so people ended up having to build apps because Apple decided that the right way to do this was apps. And don't get me started about Newsstand, which is where they kicked all of the newspaper and magazine publishers rather than giving them a simple news format inside of books. But they tried it, but the fact is Apple doesn't care. Apple doesn't care about this market. They have all those tools, but they didn't care. The fact that the Books app exists at all is, I would say, mostly inertia, because it was part of an initiative that Apple just didn't care about, and they didn't care about building tools for it. And I think in the end, what it comes down to is who does care about this enough? And book publishers don't care about it enough to invest in it. And the truth is the people who do care about it are your YouTubers, and they're your people with recipe blogs that spend 5,000 words telling you a story you don't care about before you get to the recipe because the SEO says they're supposed to do it.
Do I use cheddar or Gruyere?
It's so they can run an ad every...
low melt cheese. Just tell me. Yeah.
Sure.
Every 5 inches they run an ad.
And so, it's a nice dream, but like Apple's not going to do it because they literally, even though they have all the tools, they don't care. And every now and then Apple does get that point where they're like, oh yeah, we're going to change the world with this. And then they realize it's complicated and it's not their core competency. And they kind of abandon it. And books already went through that.
No, and I agree with you. When I say it's a lost opportunity, this was an opportunity in 2010, not an opportunity right now. I just look at it like, oh, that was because the issue is like the interface. When you make things easier to do or harder to do, it changes the way people interact. So when we say this doesn't exist, it's because the tool to make it doesn't exist. And the thing is that the when you look at, for instance, I was talking to some friends about how I watch NFL football now has completely changed. Like I watched games completely different this year than I've ever watched before. And I was watching my behavior, which is that I start all the games 20 minutes late. I skip not only the ads, but any slow play. Like any play that I don't think there's going to be an interesting replay, I just hit 15 seconds ahead. And I just sit there and I just tap through the game. When I get caught up, I go do something else for a while. Because then I can calm down because every Steeler game is like spread by 3 points, right? And so I go, I'm going to go do some other stuff, and I come back and I'm behind again, and then I run through it. That is not a behavior I used to have. Like that was, and the interface changed my behavior. The fact that I could do that so seamlessly changed the way that I watched games, and I think that. In the same sense, I still get people that walk up and, I made these training things on how to do 3D 20 years ago. And they're like, when are you going to do more of those? Those are the best training ever. And I'm like, you have no idea how much blood and sweat took to make those training. Because we made them in FileMaker. Like we were like, and they were every mouse click was animated in After Effects. It was this most painful, and it was good, but it did exactly these things that we're talking about, which is that I'm going to explain it to you. I'm going to show you how to do it only if you need it. I'm going to explain to you why you're doing it. And it was an incredible amount of work. But again, what I look at is if you put a template into Pages that did what my training did back then, I'd make them all the time. Like it just, it'd be really easy for me to do them.
Yeah, it just feels like the world has moved on. Although I will say that we were starting this conversation by talking about Apple's lists. The books in Apple's lists are just, again, not just words, Dan, not just words. Words are important, but that's what they are. They are your chosen medium, which is it's just a lot of words. And
right, and I'm a non-word person.
Yeah. So okay. So turning back to words for a minute, because Alex sort of took us on a multimedia journey. It's his thing.
We have time.
It's Alex's thing. But I do want to talk about the words part of this too, because Andy mentioned Kobo and Kindle and all of that, and I will mention regarding DRM, regarding copy protection. I'm not going to tell you where to find it, but I will tell you that there's a great app called Calibre that you can download that is free, that is an ebook management system, and that there is a plugin for Calibre that you will have to find that does a very good job of removing Kindle and Kobo DRM so that you, again, not so you can pirate books. Don't pirate books. Dan has to eat. But what you can do is take your Kindle book.
A beautiful infant child, you bastards.
But it does let you take that Kindle book you bought and use it on a Kobo reader instead because you prefer the Kobo reader. or vice versa. Imagine
what's interesting to me
that.
about the Apple Books thing in general is the fact that they even added this. Like, to me, that was a sort of, okay, all right, we're interested in Apple Books again. Apple's attention has come around once more as the planet has rotated, and we're talking about books again. I find it a little fascinating. Again, I speak from my somewhat meager experience here as well. But what's interesting to me about the sort of like the list here is that I have a heavy suspicion based on my personal experience that the amount of units you have to move to get onto a top book list at Apple Books is considerably lower than pretty much everywhere else. I can say this because I've made it up to bestsellers on Apple Books. And so it's kind of intriguing to see, because I imagine some of these are doing very good business. I'm curious as to why, like, what about these particular titles have seized on people specifically who use Apple devices? To me, that is a fascinating question. But it is interesting to see Apple talking about, like, hey, we're going to encourage more people to engage in some way with books, which suggests to me maybe they have some renewed interest in this some way. And to our point earlier about discussing taking on Amazon and all the various reasons why Apple is or is not successful about that, they are one of the few companies with the weight and the money to do it if they felt like, hey, we can actually take a chance. And they've been gun shy because they got sued.
That's also
by
true.
the Department of Justice over this. And so, that's unfortunate because that only solidified Amazon's stranglehold of this market. And the fact that Apple, I think, has kind of seeded it over the last decade because, well, we got into trouble and we got smacked down. And so it's tricky because, now they're even further down in the trenches than they were 10 years ago. And getting out of there is going to be real tough because Amazon is a 2,000-pound gorilla. Yeah.
And to their credit, like, how do we remember how flat-footed we were when the first Kindle reader came out? Like the idea that this is one of those areas in which sometimes when a company is a behemoth and arguably a monopoly, sometimes it works out well for people because they have the sort of firepower to say that we really want to start selling digital books, but we have phones. At best, people have little tiny phones with bad screens whose batteries are going to last maybe 3 hours reading books. We need to develop an entire we need to
device.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm trying to remember whether the Sony ebook reader came before it or not. But the idea that this is not an electronics company. This was a digital store company that they said we're going to have to develop our own platform just so that we will be able to sell this product we want to sell, which was something that we should kind of like acknowledge that, okay, that was a big swing. And I hate monopolies. I hate the fact that it is legally not possible to acquire this book without DRM or convert it to without DRM. But okay, fair play to Amazon.
The DRM thing is interesting too, because there are cases where in Amazon, publishers can request their books be published DRM free on Amazon. They exist.
Yeah. Yes.
And in fact, I believe my book is DRM free on Amazon because it's published. This most recent was published by my agency. I would kind of be interested to see Apple do that. That is one way for Apple to potentially gain some ground there because their stuff is just EPUBs. It's just EPUBs. You could read it on a Kindle. You could read it on a Kobo reader. It'd be fine. And in fact, there is some interesting argument there that if Apple made themselves a more attractive storefront and then had you the ability to read their Apple books on other devices. If I could buy a book from Apple Books and put it on my Kobo or put it on my Kindle, I'm more interested in buying stuff from Apple Books at that point. Yeah. And in truth, that opens up Apple in some ways to these charges of being monopolistic or having platform lock-in, which is stuff we've seen them trying because it's in their own self-interest to push back against in other places, like with the recent RCS adoption, USB-C adoption, all that stuff. This is one place where it's like, hey, we can't really lose anything from this. Yes. So we might as well give it a shot.
Well, we have only covered 2 of the lists so far. I love it. It's MacBreak Weekly. I come in the door thinking, what are we going to talk about? And an hour passes. And I still am not off of my first. I made my own list. It's a list of lists. Anyway, we'll complete the lists in a minute. But first, Leo has an important message from you from the astral plane.
Our show today brought to you by MyLeo. I love it. Jason, I'm going to interrupt just again for 1 second to tell you about MyLeo. I love it when we can give you a product, an advertiser that we use. I have become the biggest fan of MyLeo. MyLeo Photos is the full name, MYLIO. because it is the way to get my photos from everywhere. Apple's Photos, Google Photos, Instagram, Flickr, everywhere. In fact, if I take a picture on my phone, it's instantly part of my Mylio library. It is and then you get all these additional features, all sorts of AI. Right now, for a limited time, Mylio is offering, I shouldn't bury the lead, so let me give you the top line here. A holiday gift bundle. This is a great time to get started. I saw somebody the other day saying, never sign up for anything unless it's Black Friday, right? Or Black November. The holiday gift bundle from Mylio, 1 full year of Mylio Photos Plus. That includes easy-to-use editing software called Radiant Photo, very cool package, premium membership to the photographer community at ViewBug, all of that, one low price. And by the way, what I love about Mylio is they are in constant update mode. They are improving Mylio all the time. They just dropped the year's biggest update with more customization, more accessibility options, more control on how you handle your digital libraries. Mylio Photos Plus even offers more by letting you connect all your devices and take full advantage of the new Shared Albums and Spaces tool to share your media with custom control and privacy. Great for family sharing or at work. You know, your work colleagues can see just those photos and not the rest. They can upload to that. It's a shared photo library. It's really a very impressive tool. Spaces, that's the tool I'm talking about, lets you sort and organize files into subject-specific views like family, work, personal, private. You can create custom spaces for whatever you want. It could just be for you, or it could be for a work group. More productive collaborations with your team. Could be for automatically sharing photos with family members signed into the account. They can all sign into the same account. They don't have to get a Mylio Photos subscription to do this. And with remote control, you have full control over what they can see, what's visible, which tools are available on each device connected to your account. So you could say, you know, mom's iPad, she can see this space, but no other, right? This is great for work portfolios. You can share with clients. You do a wedding, right? You create a space for the wedding. You could share it with clients. They can't see anything else. You could protect it with passwords or pins. It's a great way to manage project assets. It's even for your own personal organization. And the AI tagging in Mylio makes organization a snap. It does it all behind the scenes. You can use Mylio. The best way to do this is you can use it for free on one device. So pick a device with a lot of storage. Make it your Mac, your desktop. But you could also do it on your iPhone or your Android device. But you can get it for free on one device and start playing with it. The editing features, the organizational features, the smart tagging, the face recognition, all without going to the cloud. Completely private. And if you do decide to back up to the cloud, it supports that, but it encrypts before they go, so no one can see it except you. We got a great deal right now. Get 25% off your first year of Mylio Photos Plus. Now, this is a limited time. Do not wait. And then if that's not enough, check out the holiday gift bundle. Even more great deals. Just go to this special address, mylio.com/twit25, okay? mylio.com/twit25. You're going to get 25% off. And if nothing else, download Mylio Photos for free because you will be blown away. And then I think you're going to want this deal. mylio.com/twit25. I put it on everything. Macs, PCs, iOS, Android. It's everywhere. And I completely control the flow of photography. I have multiple backups. I back up to my Synology. I can go on and on. It's so fantastic. Mylio Photos. Get Mylio Photos Plus right now for free. Mylio.com/twit25. Check out the great 25% off deal. Mylio. Thank you, Mylio, for your support of MacBreak Weekly. Jason, what's that? What's news? What's hot? What's going on, man?
It's Liss, Leo. My Leo. My Leo. Is that Leo? I always think that, but I never say it. Wait, we got more
Leo,
Liss.
My Leo.
Which Leo?
Sorry.
Who's Leo?
My captain.
Who moved my Leo? Okay, so list number 3 and list the last. Apple Music Replay 2023 also dropped as we record this Tuesday, the 28th of November. This is a little different. This is a feature that you can actually access year-round that shows you sort of what you have been playing in Apple Music, again, just in Apple Music, in their ecosystem, over the last year. Top artists, top radio stations, top albums, top playlists, top songs, all of those things are in there. And there's some extra stuff that they've added today. There's sort of Instagram stories like thing that plays different videos and with music in the background and all of that. But and so it's fine. They do this every year. It is competing with the Spotify Unwrapped feature, which is very important that Spotify does. Apple's trying to kind of catch up to what Spotify does. What I find most interesting about this feature is that I can tell you where you can find it. Can I tell you in the music app? The answer is no. It's Apple Music. It's not in the music app. You have to go to replay.music.apple.com in order to see it, because after many, many years of doing this feature, it's in a web browser. That's the only place you can get it. What?
Apple, noted web developer.
Yes.
This is a sweet solution, Jason. You see everything in the web app. Yeah, it's weird that the book thing is in the Books app,
right?
And this is in the web app. And it's like, if we'd built it today instead of 10 years ago, maybe we would have made this in the music app. Okay.
Are they excited about just like they found a guy who still remembers how to use web objects from Next Step, and they say, "Ooh, here's something to give this guy to do. He's only retiring in 8 months."
Every time they update it, they have to shut down the entire server. It's no good.
I don't understand. I mean, sure, there's an amazing story of horrible technical debt going on here where we can't build it there. There's something in the app. We can't do it, but we could do it on the web. And somebody said yes, and now it's years later, and they're like, yeah, but we've got it on the web, so do we need to put it in the app? And then somebody now this year is like, Books did it. Why didn't we do it? Books did it.
The real coup will be when Apple Classical has its own replay thing in the Apple Classical app.
Maybe they could just say, "Hey, go to the Classical app to see what music you played in Apple Music. It's over there." Even if it's just Taylor Swift, but in the Classical app, you can.
She's a classical artist.
I don't know about
Apple TV Plus. Sign up for a free preview just to check out. Then you can cancel it in 7 days.
Right,
and you see
right.
Yeah.
That's where you'll find it.
Synergy.
Maybe they could put it in Books.
Services.
Books.
Yeah, sure.
It's just right in there. Books and music, they go together. My list is always super boring because I listen to the same like 5 artists at any given time, and so it's always the same top artists. It's their latest album, and it's not that exciting. Although it does do. There's one stat that I really liked, which is I listened to a playlist of music by Bob Mould, the alternative music grandfather. When I write, it's one of like 2 or 3 playlists that I use to focus when I'm writing, and the stat that I did like is Apple Music told me I am one of the 100 most active users listening to that artist. Like I'm in the top 100 players of Bob Mould's solo work, which is kind of fun. Only Apple knows that. So it makes me feel a little special. Why am I not in the top 10 though? I need to work harder, write more next year. The one that fascinated me though, and because every now and then you see something and you're like, that doesn't seem like. The play counts don't always seem right. The minutes don't always seem right. Sometimes I think Apple loses some telemetry or they're not paying attention in certain circumstances and things don't sync right. The one that got me this year that made me lean forward and go, I don't think this is right, is I was told that my number 1 radio station for the year was something called Dog Music, which I listened to for 841 minutes. As far as I can tell, this is music for, not about or by, for dogs. And I have no idea what happened here. We did get a dog. We did worry about her separation anxiety. I think I did play the dog music station one time. Did I leave it on for 14 days straight or whatever? I don't think so. But
did the dog figure out how to use your smart speaker? Maybe that was it.
Maybe if you bark
dog music.
Yeah, maybe the HomePod was listening for
vibrations. The remastered version, not the crappy one from 1968.
Okay, I heard dog noises. I'm now playing dog music. That's it. Yeah.
Similarly, I can see why number 2 on my list of most played songs is Africa by Toto, because it is a song that my son enjoys listening to and will quiet him down. So I definitely, similarly, my 4th top artist is They Might Be Giants for Kids.
Yes.
So that is definitely messing with my stats this year. But I'm glad to report that my number 1 top artist remains John Williams. So congratulations, Johnny. You're over 90, but you're still racking it up for me.
On brand for Dan, let me tell you.
Do you think that they for all of the for so many different parts of the company and different streaming companies, there has to be like an executive who was hired because he or she is a master at tact. Like, so when it comes up with these recommendations of, hey, here's the sort of listener you are, it's like, okay, the numbers say that they might have been in DC on January 6th. We're going to spin that in a positive direction. It's not insurrectionist rock. It's for people who are adventurous, people who are independent. And so I'm getting my Spotify playlist. I'm getting now that Spotify made a hit out of it, everybody's doing playlists. And I can kind of see where they want to say, you really know what you like. And that's what's great about you. You know what you like. You're in your lane, and that's what's great about you. Not that, there was music after 1991, and a lot of it was made by people who were not former members of Nirvana. Like, yeah, you're right. Good point.
Mine is very confusing. Like and the funny thing is, I don't remember listening to Billy Joel the most. I just don't like. I don't remember, but it's like Billy Joel, the Eagles, and then it's like Peter Gabriel, Toad the Wet Sprocket, and then somehow number 5 is Dua Lipa. I was like, I don't remember listening to Dua Lipa that much, but evidently.
There is weird stuff in there too. I agree. Like, I'm looking at my top album list and it tells me number 12 way down there. Fine. I listened to the soundtrack to season 2 of Foundation from Apple TV Plus. It's like, yes, I definitely did listen to that soundtrack. I just discovered it a couple of weeks ago when I finished it. But it also tells me I played it 39 times. If I only found this album within the last couple of weeks, I'm pretty sure I have not listened to it 39 times.
Is Apple gaslighting us? Is Spotify gaslighting us to, like, are they being paid to say, oh, no, you love the new Taylor Hicks album. You love it.
I think that their telemetry is weird. And so I was told that I have listened to 1989, Taylor's version by Taylor Swift, 39 plays. Now, okay, I love that album, and I have been listening to the new version of it, and that's great. Have I listened to it 39 times? Well, no. 39 plays, what does that mean? And the fact is, before it came out, there were like a couple of teaser tracks that were in there, and it was empty, and you could press play on that. I think it's like, if you have the album selected and you click on it, it considers it an album play.
If you start listening to an album and then you stop,
it's like a play.
Half the song in because you're like, oh, that's the wrong thing. Yeah, I think it's counting stuff that it should not be
it's wired up to different kinds of UI and sending those back. Yeah.
Well, some seem so high. It's like
and some seem low. You're right.
Like I was like, again, I have like Dua Lipa at 23 plays. I don't remember listening to Dua Lipa at all. Like I just somewhere in there, it might have been like in road trips or something. And then like the search from NF, it says 12 plays. I'm like, oh, I definitely listened to that way more.
Well, I mean, it's like I just said, like I was listening to Africa with my kid, like 21 plays. I've definitely listened to that song more than 21 times with him this year.
Exactly.
100%.
Like I Won't by AJR. That's like my theme song. So like I've definitely listened to that one 12 times. I can listen to that one 12 times in a row. Like, so the thing is, I was like, the fact that it only shows 12 times over a year, I was like, I don't
yeah, it's not right. Questions. Yeah. And and I've got my, an album came out late last year, Being Funny in a Foreign Language by the 1975, which is sort of my favorite current band. They have in my top songs, it's 4 album tracks from that album, but it says I played the album 180 times, but I've only listened to the track I've listened to the most only 62 times. It can't be right. It doesn't make sense. So I don't know what they're doing. It's fun. Look, I'm a life logger. I like saying like, how much did I sleep last night? And what's and how many times has it rained in the last year in my backyard? And I have a weather station. All those things are true. And so the stats they're fun, but I never look at one of these and think it seems accurate.
Well, here's the problem is it says, okay, I won't. Let's go back to I won't, because I'm a little fixated on the fact that I know that I've listened to it way more. 12 plays. It's like a 4-minute song. So that's like 48 minutes, but it says that I've listened that it says the whole playlist. Oh, never mind. So, but the thing is it's like, it's fun if it's accurate, but it is not accurate. Like it is
weird.
There's some, I don't know how they're doing the telemetry data that is not close, because 7,500 minutes. And how do you divide that? It's not dividing that up well. So.
Did you stop listening halfway through? Who knows? Yeah, I mean, there's also weird metadata stuff in here. Like I'm looking at top genres, like great genres, always fun to argue about. But like number 1 genre for me, soundtracks. Fine. Number 2, classical. Well, a lot of soundtracks sometimes get put in a classical genre bucket. So I guess 3, rock, sure. 4, adult alternative. Okay. 5th, original score. which is also kind of a soundtrack. So why are we divvying these up, and how are we deciding which ones fit into soundtrack and which ones fit into original score? Like,
well, it has like number seven. At number 7, it says Luke Combs. I don't know who. I mean, I know the name. I couldn't tell you a single Luke Combs. I mean, I know I'm placing myself, and there's a whole bunch of people in the country now that are upset with me. I don't know who that is. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm like, I don't know who that. Like, I haven't consciously listened to any of those songs, and so I'm not sure where that. I just don't like it. It's not that this is a little inaccurate, and I think the metadata is off. Like, it is. Like, feels like it's just. I mean, some of them I recognize, but a lot of them I'm like, I don't know where any of these came from.
Yeah.
I mean, the Milky Chance, I understand. Like, I want to listen to that a lot, but a lot of them I'm just like, I don't know when I listen to Luke Combs.
I don't know what that is.
I'm sure he's a great artist. I just don't know. He's won a lot of awards, I think, evidently, but I don't. Yeah. It's not my genre.
No, it's weird. It's very weird. This is fun. Also, we so often talk about, the big tech companies, they're watching you and they're watching your every move. They know everything about you. And then you get something like this and you think, well, one, it's actually kind of fun that they were watching me, because now I can remember my past and they know things about me that that they're aggregating for me, and that's fun, and people actually can be delighted by it. But number 2 is, they're watching me, but I don't think they're counting right. Like, whatever they're watching,
it's that classic Ben Kingsley line from Sneakers about organized crime. Don't kid yourself. They're not that organized.
That's right. That's right. The truth is that they weren't that bright. All right. I'm done with lists. Those are my lists. So the show is not over, because we do have some other things to talk about. I want to talk about a stunt. We're moving on to the PR stunt category. And I like this story a lot. It is about a company called, I think, Fore, called the AirJet is the name of the product. And they did a story that got reported breathlessly all over the internet as company hacks Apple laptop to run faster or whatever. Okay. It was
interesting.
It's a good PR stunt is what it is for an interesting product. And what they decided to do, so this company makes, the AirJet is a solid state cooling system. So it's using a different technology from what we would think of as a traditional cooling system, a fan that uses heat, radiates out into air, and then the fan blows it out of the computer, right? That's how it works. This is a solid state system. So the idea is it's not using a fan, it's using a different method that is very compact, that moves heat away from the processor. And they took an M2 MacBook Air, and they hacked it. They installed their cooling system in it, and then tried to push it to the same level as a 13-inch M2 MacBook Pro, the old Touch Bar model, which has a fan. And the idea there is that there is a very small performance difference in very particular circumstances where the MacBook Air thermal throttles because it just gets too hot, and the MacBook Pro with a fan is able to work a little bit harder. I want to emphasize this. It's a very small amount of performance difference in very limited circumstances, but it can happen if you don't have a fan. And I think they picked it brilliantly, because they basically said, okay, what if we took this computer without a fan and put our thing that is not a fan in it, that uses a solid state method of radiating the heat away from the processor? Could we get it to be cooler? This is not a product that's going to exist. It's more like they're saying, hey, Apple and other companies that make hot running computers that are very thin and light, and you don't want to have a fan blowing, get to know me, right? You should know about this. And they succeeded. It's actually a very cool idea for an alternate technology that isn't blowing air with a fan, the tried and true, in order to get something that's quiet but also can run a lot hotter because there's something actively cooling it inside. It's a cool idea.
Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed out at the outset very correctly that this is a marketing thing, because I've seen this video like in lots of different channels, like the really high profile tech channels, like got access to this, and also got access to this isn't a case of, hey, they cracked open the MacBook Air, they removed whatever cooling system and fans, they replaced it with this thing. No, it was like, okay, we will no longer be able to have USB, we will no longer have speakers. We had to grind a couple of microns from this lid to get it all in here. But it was an interesting demonstration that, like, when you push this hardware to its absolute limits beyond which I don't think a lot of MacBook Air consumers would probably go for. I mean, if you're looking for like a 30-minute long render, if you're to really max all the cores of this thing, you probably foresaw that in the next 2 or 3 years, and that's why you bought the MacBook Pro with a fan to avoid this throttling. But as you say, it's really, really interesting because it's not as though, hey, they just made a really small, flat sort of fan. No, it really is a brand new technology. So you don't have to carve these channels in and worry quite so much about airflow. There are a lot of considerations to be considered there. I could see Apple being interested in this in the sense that if it means that, hey, remember how we always have to figure out where to put these fans? Remember how we always have to lay out this product so that there are air channels to places where to vents that are not going to get blocked by people's laps or people's desks? Here is a way that we could change the design we'd have more freedom to design if we use this component. The fact that I think it was first introduced at Computex, I think, last year. At least it's the first time that I actually saw mention of it. But it's early and it's one supplier. And so until they can demonstrate that we can make millions of these to order, and specifically the way that Apple wants to make them, I don't think we'll see anything about it. But it was a very, very clever way to demonstrate that we're not promoting this as a hack that you can do yourself. If you can get your hands on one of these, you would not want to use this MacBook Air with the things that we've done to it. But it does show that, okay, here is something that could actually work out. Right. If you were to integrate that with all the rest of the steps of your design, it could not necessarily make a cooler, faster machine, but allow you to make a flatter machine, a machine with more room for batteries in it, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I should say, as listener David is pointing out in the chat, that it does move air ultimately, but it's a solid state device, right? So it's got incredibly tiny things that vibrate and basically create airflow. So it's not a fan. So you still need it's still thermodynamics, right? There's still heat that needs to be moved, and it needs to be moved to a place that's cooler than where it is right now. But it is such a different thing in terms of its cool technology. Whether it's practical or not remains to be seen, but that's why they're doing tech demos like this. And like, could this be the fanless laptop of the future that it's fanless, but it's still moving air because it wants to run hotter sometimes. I like it. It's cool. It's fun.
Yeah. I mean, to Andy's point, like, real estate inside Apple products is incredibly valuable, right? Probably more than like a Manhattan. So, if Apple's got an opportunity to free up some space in there and do other stuff with it, that's a huge win for them. I mean, it's the same reason that they got rid of the headphone jack and that they're doing all this other stuff, is like we have more room in there to put in, whether it's battery or whether it's other chips or whether it's other stuff, silicon stuff they're working on. There's a lot of options in there. I'm curious to see, like you said, scale is probably the biggest issue here, but it's not hard to imagine Apple thinking like, hey, buy these guys for a song for their intellectual property and we're off and running.
Or it's possible that Apple looked at this technology like a year ago and we're like, nah.
Excellent point.
And we don't know. But I admire it. Yes, it got blown out of proportion because somebody did a thing that they modded a Mac. And then it's like, oh, look what happened. But it's at the core of it, I mean, it's a PR stunt that worked. I love that about it. And then when you look at it and get past the PR stunty part of it, you're like, that's really cool. Like, it's a cool idea. And I think they chose really well, because the M2 chip and the difference between those two, it's just like, it's in certain use cases, it's a low end chip, but you do have a case where you've got two computers, one has a fan, one doesn't. What's the difference? And then you instead of taking out a fan, you just put this thing into a fanless enclosure and say, look, we're so small that we can fit right in there, asterisk, as Andy pointed out. Not really fit in, but kind of, sort of, if you squint a little bit, fit in there. It's a cool idea. I think it's fun. So I thought I'd bring it up. Speaking of hardware, Digitimes had a report following up on a bunch of stuff that good old Mark Gurman, or as he's known here, Mark Bloomberg, apparently. He's not related to Mike Bloomberg in any way, though. Mark Gurman at Bloomberg mentioned this earlier, but there was a new Digitimes report about Apple's future Vision Pro or Envision OS hardware development, I guess is the right way to phrase it. And the idea that they are working on a new version of the Vision Pro, the second generation of the Vision Pro, and they're targeting 1,500 to 2,500, which is a lot less than the first generation of the Vision Pro is going to be. And what Digitimes says that they're also trying to do is make an affordable version, and the goal there is to cut the bill of materials, the parts that make the Vision Pro, in half, which is a sort of a new little detail here.
Well, and to be clear, that often happens with production. I mean, like it's not that's not an unusual thing. Like you figure out how to do it, and the first time you do it, it's really expensive, and then after that, it gets cheaper because you figured it out. So I think them getting down to I think that 1,500 is probably pretty aggressive for them to try to get down to with a similar profile. But I think, because I do think that what's going to happen is that the specs that we see in the Pro right now will become the new affordable specs. The Pro will go the other direction, which is that we'll probably get to that 120 frame per second, 8K per eye, will probably be the next generation. Whereas the current version will be a less expensive version of what we have right now. Like it's not going to get less than this. It's just going to be the same thing, but $2,000 or $2,000. I'd be really surprised if they got 1,500.
What you have to cut in order to get to that price point too, because it's not all process stuff, right?
Well, the LED LCD on the outside.
That's the question, right?
Save some money.
Apple talked a lot about how important that was to it, but we all are sitting there going, it's expensive.
It's the touch bar of the Apple Vision Pro, I think.
Yeah, that's not a bad way of looking at it, because it does seem like it's something. If you wanted to lose something, you could lose that. They have to find a new way to spin the story of, it is important to stay engaged with your outside world, and we do want people to be able to talk to you. But here we've come up with you see a light come on when they're looking through the camera.
Exactly. It's you can put a little picture of your eyes in there, like slide it in. It's a little transparency. Slide it in, the lights up. Look, it's my eyes.
They can replace this $823 component with a pair of stick-on googly eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
But a lot of it doesn't the other.
But
a
lot
of it's just scale. It's literally like we can order more of them at a time. I mean, they can only. They can, even if they wanted to, I don't think they can make more than 200,000 or 300,000 a year of the new ones.
We know about the Sony display bottleneck, and the more they make of these, presumably they're going to get some volume there, and then they'll may be able to get the price down. I find fascinating that it costs. The Vision Pro is going to cost a lot, and the report suggests that Apple is not taking much of a profit on this. I'm unclear whether Apple is doing a traditional margin or how much of it they're eating, but it's a very expensive product. And that's why I'm fascinated by the idea of cutting the bill of materials in half, just as how do you solve that problem? Because the answer is yes. The answer is you do everything that we've said. You throw features off. You find lesser features, things that seemed like you had to have them in terms of like the comfort of the strap and the woven fabric of that head strap and all of that. Like, well, can we do a cheaper strap? And as Alex said, some of it is you make it up by having it be the components that you're building now, and in 2 years they're going to cost a lot less. But like cutting your bill of materials in half, this is the reason that there are some reports that they may not be able to make this product, this low-end Vision OS hardware product, because it's going to be really hard to get down to that price point. I think that they should be striving for it, and they obviously are. The DigiTimes report also suggested that they're working on a few different variations on that second-generation hardware. So you may end up with sort of like the really, really good high-end one, and then one that's, Apple loves a good, better, best, right? Always likes good, better, best. And some people will be, in fact, Mr. Lindsay here, I think he's a best kind of guy, but a lot of people are better. They come into the store thinking of the good price, and they end up spending for the better price, and that's how Apple gets all the money.
Yeah. I really do think that for this first iteration, they knew that this is a special kind of product. This is not an Apple Watch. This is not even the first iPhone. That this is something where only this is a super niche product, super niche for Apple, that they can and as an unproven product, they can say, you know what, we're going to go for the higher end, like enterprise level price point for these VR AR goggles. We are not going to restrict ourselves to be cheaper than $3,500. If we have to go $4,000, we'll go $4,000, because this first iteration and the lessons we learned from it and from the developers and from the people who use it are going to teach us what we needed to have in here, what we did not need to have in here, and that will guide them on what the second generation of this thing can be.
I think it's probably going to guide them on what the fourth generation is. I have a feeling that Apple knows what the second and possibly the third. It's so hard to make these. Then I think they have a pretty good idea, because they've already had to cut. Most of us that do production know that 8K per eye, 120 frame per second that's the flat point. Like that's where you have to get to at some point. And so the fact that we're not seeing that in the current performance means that they already know where they need to go. for that performance for the next generation of Pro. And so I think that's so resolution, that interactivity, those type of things. So I think that the Pro is pretty well known to them. I think it's just a matter of figuring out how to lower the price for the next ones.
Well, it interacts a bit with both the software and marketing as well, too, because we also have a device that's not out for anybody to use at this point. Nobody knows what people are going to end up using it for. The software is still a bit of a moving target by all accounts. That's the thing that's not quite done yet. The hardware is, been locked for a while probably. And so even if they're looking down the road, it's saying this is what the next version of that hardware looks like. If something about that story changes in the next year in terms of what people who are buying these as early adopters are actually doing with it or using, it can influence stuff down the road in terms of how they're going to affect stuff. Maybe not as much with production, but in the way of terms of what features are important, what features aren't important.
I think it'll definitely affect the software development, like the platform development. Yeah. The hardware, I bet you, is probably not movable until probably 2026 or 2027. Like I think that they know what that turn has to be because it's so complicated. But
sure, yeah.
how they develop, what features they develop inside the software and inside the delivery tools, I think, are the things that are probably highly malleable.
What stuff is emphasized or de-emphasized? I think about the early versions of the Apple Watch too, right? I mean, there are certainly plenty of features that were on the Apple Watch in terms of software features that then ended up being things that Apple talked about a lot and we're really excited about, and then realized nobody uses this. And so, years on, you get even interesting choices like, hey, we have this side button. We're going to change 2 or 3 times what that button does because depending on what people use it for. So even if we have a button on our Apple Vision Pro, it may not do the same thing in 2 years that it does now.
It might be good to have multiple countdown clocks because, alarms, because that's what everybody's using. That's
weirdly enough.
Number one use
that people want.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the number one use of my watch is alarms. So. Mm-hmm.
It's one of the great, I was thinking about this today. I am really looking forward to next year. And part of it's I love the iPad and all the iPads need to be updated because that didn't happen this year at all. But Vision Pro, I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know how people are going to use it. And I sometimes I know Leo is sort of he's betting that it's going to be a flop. But I don't know if it's going to be a flop. I don't know if it's going to be a success. What I do know is one of the world's most interesting and creative companies has spent a huge amount of money building their most probably cutting-edge high-tech product that will be available to the public ever, or at least for a very long time. They don't quite know what it is going to be. The public doesn't quite know what it's going to be. And one thing I'm certain about is that we're going to learn things that surprise everybody, including inside Apple, as it rolls out and as people use it and as people build software for it. And, that's kind of why I love technology, is that sort of thing of
yes.
I don't know. I mean, if it fails, it's going to be interesting. If it succeeds, it's going to be interesting. If it muddles along, it's still going to be interesting regardless.
I think that it's not going to be next year. It's going to be the next decade. Like Apple, Apple's not Google. They're not going to go, oh, we did this and it didn't really work. Never mind. This is, I think that they, and I think we've seen 10%. I think they've shown us just enough to keep us interested in talking about it.
For sure.
And so I think that there's a lot more that they're going to roll out with what they have here. And I do think that they're going to keep pounding at this for a decade. And I think that that's exciting to see a company this big throwing they're all in. This is they're all in on this platform. It's not like we're going to see if this works. They think it's going to work. And I think that that's going to be a pretty fun ride.
Yeah.
To watch.
I think particularly if Apple doesn't lock themselves into some sort of an artificial refresh rate on this. If they say that, we think that this first edition does exactly everything that we intended the first edition to do. We are definitely going to be continuing to work on this. We're definitely going to continue to sell this, but don't expect after the 2024 edition there to be a 25 edition and a 2026 edition. We will update these when we have a good idea of what we need to make next, because they can ride this for ride is a denigrating term. That's not what I meant, but they can make a very good experience with the hardware of this $3,500 headset and decide that we're going to keep the hardware as it is, and we're going to spend 2, 3, 4, 5 years working on the software and working on a third-party hardware software library to make sure that developers are not just porting iPad apps and not just giving us, hey, look, I'm answering 100 emails, but I'm doing it at Yosemite in the snow. Like, no, give us real apps that take advantage of this. They have the time to really figure this out. And I'm with you, Jason. As observing a company that for its entire life has been, we are going to observe what other companies do and then try to do that thing but better, decide that, you know what, no one has done this thing well, no one has proven that there's any interest in this thing, but we really think this is interesting, so we're going to go in.
Yep, can't wait. Looking forward to it. We are going to be back with the picks of the week. Everybody prepare themselves. Listener, prepare yourself. Panelists, prepare yourselves. I will prepare myself. And while we were preparing, we're going to let Leo philosophize one last time. Leo?
All right. One more time, I'd like to interrupt, Jason. Thank you so much for filling in for me. I'll be back next week. This episode of MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by HID Global. Leave the stress of tedious PKI management behind in 2023 and stress less with complete certificate lifecycle automation from HID Global's PKI as a service model. With Google moving toward 90-day SSL certificates, don't get caught in a tough place. Automation now is a must, and HID's model of automation does not require any additional hardware, no additional software investment, no additional installs in order to automate the life cycles of your organization's certificates. It happens automatically. It's painless. You're going to love it. And for Google and Mac systems, HID's connector model of PKI uses open source certificate utilities, so it works everywhere. Your organization can use multiple operating systems, which in this day and age with BYOD is a must. You'll ease your procurement pains with HID Global. You get up and running in 2 weeks. Lots quicker than the competitors. Their assistance with deployment always includes their incomparable white glove service, expertise, and knowledge. This is what they do. They know it. Plus, of course, you'll receive ownership of private keys. HID takes care of your PKI so you can spend your holidays and weekends taking care of yourself and your family and the things that matter to you outside work. This is brilliant. HID.link/MacBreak Go there today to see more. HID.link/MacBreak We thank HID Global for supporting MacBreak Weekly. I will be back next week, Jason. Don't get too comfortable, but I'm glad you're sitting in the big chair. I'll see you next week.
Oh, so comfortable. Oh, so comfortable. But I know I can't stay here for very long. Not for very long. Let us do our picks of the week. That's a thing we do. Why don't we give it a shot? Alex, Lindsay, what do you have? Oh, he disappeared. You pressed the wrong button, Alex.
You put on your invisibility glasses.
And we can't hear you. I surprised Alex, and he doesn't have his microphone on.
No, I had it all on. I had to put this on, and it was very confusing. So
okay.
I can't see you.
Great.
How do I look? Do I look good?
I'm shining with the brightness of the sun, though. Then you could see.
Exactly. You look like you're about to hold up the Men in Black thing and make us all forget the last hour.
Exactly. So this is a reminder that these are eclipse glasses. That's what they're for here. They're almost opaque because they will allow you to look at the sun. And this is I got them from eclipseglasses.com. We did some research on it. This is the reminder that the last eclipse in the United States for the next 20 years is April 8th, 2024. And if you want any glasses and you want it to go somewhere and you want to do something to see it, you have to start now. so like all the RVs are sold out. We're going to do some coverage for office hours, and so we're going to cover it along the spine. It's
going from Texas all the way up through Maine, I believe,
Newfoundland.
And then on into Canada. Sure.
Yeah, it's into Canada and across the top, and there's so many cities that it's going over. It's probably one of the most populated eclipses in a very, very, very long time, and it will be the last one we'll see in a very, very long time, unless we're willing to travel to some other part of the world. And so, but one of the things that we started having our meetings a couple weeks ago to get ready for it, and we realized like a lot of the resources, some of the office hours members have already gotten space, and they got it a year ago, and we realized as we started to look that the whole opportunity is tightening up very quickly. So it came to me yesterday. I should probably recommend the glasses are fine. You should get glasses. But the main thing is that if you want to get a photo of it, you need a special lens cover so that you don't destroy your lens. Do not use binoculars. That will be the last thing you see ever. And so these are, but all of those tools and all the pieces of hardware within the next month or two will probably be gone. Like, because why make more when you're not going to have another one for 20 years? So there's a certain push that's happening right now, and this is the thing to get. And it's, as someone we covered the eclipse for National Geographic in 2017, and I didn't understand why anyone cared about the eclipse. It was not something that was on my register until I was there, and it is something.
A total eclipse is something totally. My kids were very skeptical when we dragged them. We dragged them out into the middle of Idaho because we wanted the best chance to not have cloudy conditions, right? Because that's the danger that you have. And my daughter's like, whatever, eclipse, whatever. My dad drags me to these things. And then she saw it, she started crying. And afterwards, she was like, oh, I didn't understand it all. A total eclipse is not the same as any other eclipse. It's spectacular.
The other eclipses. After you've seen a total eclipse, when they say, we have this partial eclipse, you're like, okay, that's cute. Like, I don't even know why.
It's adorable.
Like you're like if you saw one of those, do not think that meant anything. Like when you see a total eclipse, there is a hole in the sky.
And it gets dark.
And there's a biblical component because all of the animals go absolutely crazy.
Or they all sit down and go to when we were in Bend, Oregon, and they all were like, oh, I guess it's time to go to bed. Yep. And they all just started laying down. They all just were like, we're all going to lay down now. And then it go, oh no, I guess we get up again. And the temperature drops 10 degrees in like 30 seconds. It is. It's just it is an amazing experience. It's going right through the United States. I would highly recommend finding a place to go, and it's like nothing you've ever experienced, and you should get glasses.
And you should get glasses. Thank you, Alex. And the nice thing about this is that although things are booking up, it does cover an enormous amount of ground. Yeah, and if you can drive to the side of the road or this, on a street somewhere in a place where the eclipse is happening, and it's going all the way from, the Texas-Mexico border up through Dallas, all the way up through Cleveland, and then it continues on.
It's going to be a fantastic party.
It is. You should give it a shot if you've got the ability to travel at that time of year. I believe the Cleveland Guardians opening day is during the eclipse, and they're going to stop the baseball game for an eclipse break. Wow. Which is, I can't even. There's a minor league team in Salem, Oregon, who did that during the last eclipse, but apparently it's going right through Cleveland, and so they're going to be able to do it at the Guardians opening day. All right, awesome. Alex picks total eclipses and also eclipse glasses. Thank you, Alex.
Exactly. Alex, can I quickly ask you the link that you gave to eclipseglasses.com? Are you wearing? Did you get the plastic Eclipser HD glasses?
Yes, of course. I got the most expensive glasses I could find.
The ones that are not paper.
$20.
I thought that was going to be your pick, which is, you got all these paper eclipse glasses, and they're no good. They're no fun. They fall apart, right? But you could get real plastic ones that actually stay on your face.
I just gave you the link, but these are actual real plastic ones that I plan to use, and they're not. And because I got paper ones on the last one, and I was just kind of like, it just. Yeah, I was like,
they're just not. Yeah, get something nicer. Treat yourself, I say. Yeah, exactly. Andy Ihnatko, what is your pick?
Well, there's a brand new holiday special on Apple TV, Hannah Waddingham, Home for Christmas. And with this stunning hour-long special, it's very, very clear there's a brand new Queen of Christmas. We already have Darlene Love. She, of course, will remain the Queen of Christmas until she chooses to hand the crown over to Hannah Waddingham. The point that I want to make is that Mariah Carey can go suck lemons. I watched it just this morning. It is such a fun special. It really finds a certain sweet spot. Hannah Waddingham is like the child of opera singers. She's been like on the performing stage for years and years and years on Broadway on the West End. Something that I did not know until I saw this show and said, wow, she sings that well. She takes the stage. It's in the form of like a live performance that they recorded, and she is on the stage all the time, and she is singing all the time. And there are people out there to support her occasionally. Leslie Odom Jr. does an amazing song with her. Most of the cast of Ted Lasso comes out, and occasionally, like, if you want to see Coach Beard like dancing with a giant candy cane in a tuxedo, along with like most of the players of the team, this is where you go to see that. I just can't say enough about it. It's exactly what I like in a Christmas special, where it's not there's nothing fakey about it. There's nothing there's no little sketches and skits about it. It really is just a musical stage performance where everyone there seems to really want to be there and really be, oh my God, I can't believe I got this opportunity to do this. This is awesome. All the crowd that must have like been watching this Christmas show in August? Like, I think it was
May. It was recorded in May. Yeah, that's good.
Thank you. Is like really excited to be there. It really did like make my Grinchy heart grow 3 sizes that day. It was really, really quite good. Very, very high recommendation. You're going to see it promoted to hell every time you open up any sort of an Apple device with access to streaming. But it's definitely worth it. I have not seen the last 10 minutes of it. So if Jason Sudeikis shows up completing like the cast of Ted Lasso, that would be a surprise. Don't know if that's so. But I haven't checked the
spoilers.
The cast list.
Yeah, you won't expect the murders at the end, Andy. It gets dark. Yeah. It really takes a turn.
But that's very much in this. The childlike surprise of running downstairs and finding out who's been murdered by Santa over the night.
Christmas morning, you can't replace it.
Yeah. You keep, as a little kid, you're going to stay up and catch him in the act and turn him in for the reward money. But something inside you tells you that, a part of you would just die if you were there when you saw him committing that murder. And you just don't want that.
Okay, it just got really dark. Dan Moren, save us with your pick.
I love puzzles, especially word puzzles. I've lately been doing the New York Times Connections puzzles, which started this past summer, I think. But if you find yourself in the need for more of those style puzzles that you can't get from the New York Times, my good pal Lex Friedman and podcast co-host does his own Connections puzzles, or Conlections as he dubs them, every day. And they're a lot of fun. They vary even more widely, I think, than the New York Times puzzle in terms of how hard they are, which I kind of appreciate because it does feel like a real, like the New York Times one, they're great, but I feel like I've started to get the shtick, whereas with Lex's, some days you're just sitting there, you open it up and you're like, what are you talking about? And then you sit there and you think about it. You're like, oh, wait, I think I start to get it. He had one that was like all just emoji. And I think I texted him that day being like, what the hell, man? And then I looked at it. I was like, oh, I get it. I see what he's doing here. So it's a real sense of satisfaction, too, when you do it. So basically, it's like there's 16 different clues and you're just trying to group them into 4 different groups of 4. That's it. That's the whole idea. And I love that he does those. He's got so many done. He's so compulsive about doing them. He's got them like a month out. He's got these things scheduled to go. So you can go to his site and you can get their scores and you can look at your trends and your history and all of that. And it's a lot of fun. It's just a thing he built in his spare time, but I highly recommend it. It's great.
Oh, it's lexfriedman.com/connections. It's in our show document there. lexfriedman.com/connections. Check it out. Although I will agree with some other people who think that it should not be called Conlections. It should be Conlections without the T, because the X is already making me XIONS is just fine. I'm going to do a pick that is completely self-serving and lets us lead into our saying goodbye to our special guest, Dan Moren, who joined us today, filling in for me because I'm filling in for Leo. My pick is All Souls Lost, the new novel by Dan Moren. You can get it now in ebook and in print. And next month, you can pre-order it now, I believe. Next month, the audiobook is arriving as well. Dan's latest novel, and not part of a series yet, so you can just read it even if you haven't read his other excellent series of novels that are all connected. This one is a standalone, and it's an urban fantasy, I think it's a lot of fun. And I think people watching MacBreak Weekly, I'm not going to spoil it, but there is an element of this story that is very Apple related in a way that I can't really give away because it's part of the plot. But there's a big technology company in it. I'll just say that. Dan,
the serial numbers are carefully filed.
I know. Oh no, very. I chuckled at all the filing of the serial numbers. Dan, thank you so much for being on MacBreak Weekly. It was great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure always to step in, and I'm glad that when Leo leaves, it trickles down, and I get to make my way onto the show.
Anything you want to plug other than All Souls Lost, available now?
Sure. Yeah. I've got a couple podcasts about technology clockwise over on Relay FM with my co-host Micah Sargent, The Rebound with my pals Lex Friedman and John Moltz. And of course, I do a ton of podcasts at The Incomparable with Jason and other fine folks who's there, as well as being at SixColors.com. You can find all about all of this as well as my books at dmoren.com. It's got all of my links to all those fine things.
Very nice. Very nice. And Ihnatko, now I mentioned you wrote a piece about Apple's holiday video on SixColors.com. I assume you'll also be on WGBH at some point in the near future?
Yes, a week from Friday, it looks like. I'm sorry, a week from Thursday. I will not be at the Boston Public Library, but go to wgbhnews.org. Thank you for running that piece, by the way. I promise everybody that the relaunch of my website and tech blog is proceeding apace. A lot of technical stuff that I have to lock down that are not on a fixed schedule, but I keep writing stuff for it and posting it like privately. And then I wrote this piece of like, hey, so maybe people aren't going to be able to read about this article about Apple's holiday thing until maybe late December or January. Maybe there should be a way that I can let people see that beforehand. So I'm glad that we got to relive some of that Mac user action. I mean, where it's like file something to you and then complete with, don't use the version I gave you. I just made some edits. Go. It
really threw me back in time to those days when I was editing your column, where first off, you showed it to me and I was like, oh man, this is vintage Ihnatko here. And then you mentioned, well, I'm going to post it when I get my site up and all that. And I'm like, well, if you want to be timely, we'll take it. Let's just do it right now. So it made me laugh. There are a lot of good laughs. You're thinking about things, thinking about the meeting feedback, of empathy, and also we laughed, we cried, we learned. It's all classic.
And given what we've all been through in the last 31 hours, I'm glad that I could
event,
give someone just some little bit distraction. I mean, not to make sure that people don't face what's going on, but it doesn't have to be quite so intense.
That's right. I'm glad
we're all in this together.
Thank you for the callback as well. In these times, these trying times, I needed that callback. Alex, Lindsay, office hours, .global, and many other things. Anything else you want to plug?
Nope. We're just cooking away every morning.
Every morning. I don't know how you do it.
Every morning. I think we're in the 1250s, somewhere in that, where without missing a day.
Wow.
And now it's just part of our personality. It's just like we can't miss a day. So, but we're having a good time. We're talking more and more about, we had to switch our systems. I lost my space in San Rafael, and so it turned out that one of our members had built. It was literally like Contact. They were like, "Well, I built another hardware system that runs just like yours," and I was like, "Can we use it for a little while?" So you're seeing us kind of work through some of those things, but it's been it's great. Yeah, that's all. You can come up and ask questions.
And thank you for the invitation. I am going to be on Michael Krasny's show in December. So.
Yes, that's not this week, but next week, right?
Yeah, we finally made it happen. Yeah, I think December 8th is when I'm doing that. So. Awesome. Thank you for the connection, making your own connections there. And you don't have to match 4 in order to make that connection. All right. That is it. We are at the end of MacBreak Weekly. We made it. Don't you feel like you accomplished something? I know I have. And next week, we're going to have to do it all again. But Leo will be back in this very chair for that. And then until then, I have to break it to you because Leo can't do it. But break time's over. Get back to work. We'll see you next week.
Listeners of this program get an ad-free version if they're members of Club Twit. $7 a month gives you ad-free versions of all of our shows, plus membership in the Club Twit Discord, a great clubhouse for Twit listeners. And finally, the Twit Plus feed with shows like Stacy's Book Club, The Untitled Linux Show, and more. Go to twit.tv/clubtwit, and thanks for your support.